This is the June 17th meeting of the Planning Commission and the Architectural Site Control Commission. It's a special meeting. Will the planning director please call roll?
I'll do roll call, starting with Planning Commission. Commissioner Targ. Commissioner Morse.
Here.
Commissioner Vatra.
Here.
Vice Chair Krasinski is absent, and Chair Brothers.
Present.
We have a quorum for Planning Commission. So moving on to ASCC. I'm going to list the two that are absent. So Commissioner Dillon and Commissioner Vaughn are absent. Commissioner Vaughn.
Here.
Vice Chair Dixon.
Here.
Chair Breen. We have a quorum for ASCC.
Thank you. The second order of business on our printed agenda is oral communications on any topic that is not on our agenda today. Because it is on our published agenda, I will open the floor to oral communications on any topic not on our agenda, but also announce it in the future. For a special meeting, we will not have general public comment. Are there any public comments on items not currently on the agenda? In the schoolhouse? I see none.
And none online.
Okay. Moving on. Speak up if I skip anything here. The next item on our agenda tonight is to receive information on the Ford Field restroom and amenities project. And I believe Darcy Smith, our
Yes.
wonderful manager, will take over that. Okay.
I will. Yes, I will kick it off. And we're here tonight because the council, our town council, asked for these two commissions to review this update from the town's landscape architect, Brian Fletcher with Calendar. So he'll introduce himself. But the town council in February authorized this work, and it's just looking at phase one. It's a discrete, small budget, just so you know, to start with, to look at this project and look at not just cost, which is frankly the elephant in the room, but the siding and the layout of the bathroom and concession stand. And the goal here is to get feedback from you and comments, and then we'll proceed to the town council, and they will make a decision to either move the project forward or give staff other direction. So my advice tonight is, I know the cost is the elephant in the room, but try and not, that's really a council item for them to focus on and make a budget decision. Your focus here should be on the siding, the architecture, the things that are generally in your purview and things that you think about. So with that, I'll let Brian introduce himself.
Thank you, Darcy. I appreciate that. Thank you, commissioners. I really appreciate the opportunity for you tonight. I'm the new kid on the block, right? I'm fairly new to this project. I apologize. I'm the new kid on the block. I'm new to this project, although I'm not new to Ford Field, nor is it not.
You just have to get really.
Is it really? Okay. How about now? Okay.
You could also, if that.
Is that one better? Yeah. Good, I'm trying. How's this? Better? Okay, super tall here. I do want you to know, so Calendar Associates has been in business for over 53 years. I've been doing this for now over 30 years. Our specialty is definitely public process projects with a public process. And we may not do everything absolutely perfect all the time, but what we do perfectly is what we really care about, understanding what the needs and the values are of each of the communities that we work on. And we strive really hard to synthesize those into responsive design solutions, whether that's aesthetics, whether that's cost. However, being the new kid on the block, there's going to be a lot of stuff here tonight that's probably old news to you guys, but it's going to help me hear a little bit about your perspectives. And I have listened to every single up to date. So I do have that background, but there's going to be some specific things that I'm going to be asking that's going to help us develop these designs and move the project forward. So next slide. So we are very, very early in the process. There we go. So we are very, very early in the process. What we're trying to do is understand what are those values? What are those things that we need to understand in order to elevate these in actual design alternatives for you all to react to? So tonight I'm going to be asking for specific feedback on certain items, and I'll highlight those as we move forward. So tonight, making sure that we're clear on the goals and objectives and the background understanding. Make sure that everybody knows what the current process is and what it isn't, because it is a very focused effort in order to provide clarity on how to move forward. Existing conditions, program, implementation, and next steps. So that's the agenda for tonight. Next slide. So we understand you guys have been dealing with this a long time. Last thing you want to do is another study. You want to see action. We understand that. What we are trying to do is develop a very focused and quick effort plan to understand the feasibility of developing a restroom concession on the site. And then what does that mean? That's aesthetics, that's cost, that's siting, all these questions that you've been wrestling with thus far. And then also provide you guys with some tools that'll help you with fundraising and identifying additional funding opportunities for this, because I think we all recognize there isn't enough funding for this project to move forward just yet. So we need to clearly understand the constraints so we don't move forward unnecessarily on different paths that don't meet kind of community expectations. We need to respect the character of Ford Field and the community expectations. And then we need to ensure that this is an actionable study, that this is going to actually help get results and help get improvements out there. Next slide. You know, like I said, I've been trying to do my homework on this because there has been a lot. The work actually started back in 2009, and believe it or not, Callender Associates was involved in the Ford Field Enhancement Master Plan back in 2009. I wasn't personally, but my firm was. It was a much different study back then. It was a larger study looking at the field and orientation and such. But what we did have conversations with the community about values, aesthetics, and such. So I believe that's valuable information moving forward. We all understood the town council meeting and the directive to do this study. The last joint meeting, which I've looked at and watched, and hopefully giving some additional information beyond what was on that. And then finally, the committee, Park and Rec Committee meeting back in March. Next slide. So what did we hear through all that? And this is maybe one of those first things that I certainly want you to have in the back of your head as far as what I would like to hear input back from you all is look at this list and let me know if we're on the right track, if we're missing something, if there's other elements in there that we need to know as we move forward. So what did we hear? There is a general consensus that the restrooms, the portable restrooms out there can be improved. I don't think anybody will argue that one. I don't think anybody can argue that concession is strongly desired. But with that, there's also concerns about costs. We'll get into that a little bit today, but just as Darcy said, and I'll speak more to it now, we're really early in this process, and it is too early to talk about costs just yet. And that was, I'll get to that in a little bit. Visual impacts, aesthetics, I heard. We're also going to talk about the view corridor, and that relates to the building location needs to be set, and so we can move forward. Then there's all sorts of related site improvements that need to be considered. And finally, this plan must reach consensus. There's a lot of opinions about this project, about locations. This plan needs to build consensus for a single path forward. So keep thinking to make sure that I had that right, okay? So what is this effort that we're doing? If I can sum it up into one word, it's clarity. This effort needs to provide clarity for the town moving forward into this project. How do we build upon these efforts and provide you the clarity? Next slide. It's thinking. Okay. So how do we build upon the effort, right? We don't want to repeat things. First off, there's a topographic survey as part of our effort. That's going to help us really clearly understand where some of these sites are buildable or not buildable. One of the setbacks here is a creek setback. We don't know exactly where that top of bank is yet until we have a topographic survey. And quite frankly, that top of bank was probably different 10 years ago than it is today. So it's wonderful to get a topographic survey to provide clarity on the sites being considered. There also needs to be annexation as far as the sanitary sewer, right? We need to get that annexed into the West Bay Sanitary District. So there's a process that we need to go through in order to achieve that. We're going to identify that process, make sure it's clearly delineated, not only the process, but the costs associated with that. The alternatives, making sure that we're providing reality with each one of these alternatives so you guys can make informed decisions on which ones to support. With that, with clarity, is going to be the cost estimates, stakeholder engagement, make sure that we're also engaging everybody throughout this process, getting direction from council, and then finally developing a fundraising package that you guys can use in order to reach out to potential donors and reach out to potential funding sources. Next slide. So when we started this process only a couple months ago, we worked really hard to create the most efficient process possible. That's to say that we are constantly evaluating how to make that process better. And if we need to pivot, we need to pivot. So what's not on here is the next meeting in front of you all, right? What is going to happen when we take all that input and actually develop concepts for you to react to with clear estimates for you to react to. So that is not included and needs to be included in this before it goes back to council. So just understand that we're going to be evaluating that as we go. But it is a fairly short, concise process. Next slide. So existing conditions. You guys are very familiar with the site, right? So I don't need to go through this, but we are dealing with, a major roadway into town, a major bikeway in through there, beautiful facilities at Ford Field and the existing snack shack and such there. So next slide. One thing I did hear in the last meeting was what does it actually look like from the view corridor? So I wanted to make sure I had an image up there. So this is actually a photograph taken from the roadway where drivers are and what you actually see from there. So you can see there is the existing trees there, get some dappled shade, and then you can see how much you can see of the snack shack and the parking lot and such, just to give you a good reference. Next slide. So whenever we start a design process, we're trying to understand what the existing conditions, what the opportunities and constraints are of the site. And right off the bat, we recognize that there's a couple things in the municipal code that are going to affect where we could put any kind of site or any kind of building. And that's the creek setback, which is 55 feet from the top of bank. And that's also the view corridor, which is 75 feet from the public right of way. Okay. So the next slide aims to superimpose those two elements onto a map, okay, an aerial map. It's not a topographic survey yet. So these are all educated guesses on exactly where the right of way is, exactly where the top of bank is. But just to give you an orientation, you can see these white dashed lines. Those are the setbacks. So down at the creek, it's the 55-foot setback line, roughly where the top of 55 feet, roughly from the top of bank there. And then the 75-foot Alpine Road setback from the right of way. Then from there, you can see in yellow, those are the areas that from an outside perspective have, in air quotes, kind of potential. They're outside of those setbacks. They're still within the park site, but they also have some other constraints to it, which I'll get to this in a second. The good news is you can see kind of up at the top, that red dashed line in those circles, sewer is relatively close by. So as far as utility connections, sewer and electrical are all in close proximity to the site and are going to then reduce the overall implementation costs. So when we were presented with the RFP and reacted to it, there was still 3 sites being evaluated as part of this, and we started to look at that. Site 1, which is in the open space, and that would be further or closest to Highway 280. Site 2, which is within the scenic setback, and Site 3 is within the parking lot. Unfortunately, there is no perfect location, right? Each one of these has got some conditions to it. We would very much like to see if we can remove, at the very least, one of these alternatives so we can focus our costs, our efforts, and we can focus our topographic survey, because it's a much different cost to survey entire park versus half the park. And let me explain. Site number 1, in our professional opinion, we don't feel that is a very feasible site, only because it's going to require a much longer accessible path of travel from where the accessible stall is going to be in the at the parking lot, around the ball field, and to that restroom. And if cost as a driver, that's going to increase your cost significantly. Not just the cost of the pathway, but then storm drain requirements and things like that could trigger. It's also within an open space. Site number 2, as you all know, very familiar, it's within the scenic corridor. Site number 3 is within the parking lot. So what we would be looking at when we consider that is, how do we mitigate any parking loss? How do we mitigate potential home run balls? Because I hear you've got some really strong hitters in this Little League. So how do we mitigate that? So this is one of those considerations. Do you recognize at least one of these might be able to be eliminated and we can focus our effort at least on the other 2, or if you're willing to focus on one of those, we'd consider it on that. But I know there's multiple opinions on that. Next slide. So now that we've moved from the siting, now we're moving into program and priorities. What is the program that we're going to be looking at as we develop these alternatives? So first and foremost, our primary focus is going to be a restroom. Secondary and equally up there is access. We can't build a restroom without the ADA access, so it's right up there. Additional amenities, picnic tables and such, and I'll get to some opportunities there. Could open up some additional funding there. The concession, highly desirable, right? But the restroom has partial funding via grant. The concession has partial funding via a commitment from the Little League. So both of those have funding that needs to be obtained. And then finally, you look out there and you see the trash that's out there. Is there a way that we can screen that a little bit more and make that a little bit more pleasant? Next slide. So this is now going into an area that we certainly would love your feedback. I think there was a little bit discussion about prefab versus custom built and such restrooms here. What we typically do, and we've done both, but the most cost-effective way of doing a new restroom is a prefabricated structure. And there's multiple companies that range in cost and range in different aesthetics. What does it mean to be a prefabricated structure? They build it off-site and they actually crane this thing in, and the contractor that you hire develops the footing or the foundation that's on it. It's usually a gravel foundation. They bring all the utilities to that foundation, and then this gets trucked in and lifted and set down on that foundation site. So that's what a prefab structure is, making sure everybody understands. As you can see in this one was done down in East Palo Alto for a project called Cooley Landing. Prefab doesn't necessarily need to be ugly by any means. Prefab structures and companies have varying degrees of modifications and enhancements that you can do in order to reflect the character that you want for your community facility. And I'll get to that in a second. So one of those questions that's going to be helpful is for us to move forward is, are you guys comfortable with prefab? Next slide. So what are those different modifications that you can do? So this is one company, and we typically bring our public clients through a process of selecting different manufacturers to evaluate. And we will be doing that, and we'll show you the options next time. This is one company that is public restroom company that seems to be most often the company that cities tend to land on, because it's a quality product and it provides you a maximum amount of enhancements in order to make it not look so standard. That makes sense. So you can change roof lines, you can change roof materials, you can change whether it's built out of block or whether it's hardy plank. Again, we need to make sure that it's all fire resistant and to current codes there. You can do wainscoting, you can do additional architectural enhancements at the extended roof lines. So there's a lot of opportunity for aesthetics. And I want to hear from you where your values are and how much you want for that. Next slide. So there's also options with configuration. There used to be the standard men's and women's bathrooms, but the more efficient way of doing restrooms these days are all gender single user restrooms that are illustrated in these two plan views here. The one on the left is if you just did a restroom, what would that look like? For this, we're looking at two single user restrooms, and that space in the middle is called a plumbing chase. That's also useful for storage, for maintenance equipment, for toiletries or toilet paper and all the things that the maintenance crews are going to be using during their time. The one on the right is a restroom concession combination. So it is more efficient if you're going to be doing this to do it under one structure than two separate structures. That plumbing chase would be in the middle between the restrooms and the concession building. And what we're illustrating here is what they're calling a type 2 concession building, which will allow what the Little Leagues like to serve, or what this Little League is wanting to serve. It's about, what you're looking at there is just under 20 by 20 feet, just to give you a scale on how big that restroom concession combo is. It's roughly 17 by 19, so just under 20 feet. Next slide. Of course, we're going to have to be considering all sorts of different codes and requirements. And I've already mentioned some of the stuff, but rest assured, when we bring you these alternatives, we're going to be addressing these as we move forward. So the path of travel is one of those big ones. And then it's also going to be making sure that the surfacing is within there. Next slide. So beyond restroom concession, there's also these other kind of supporting amenities. There's lots of picnic tables out there, right? We still want to have those, and how do we address those in any new improvements? I think there's a really kind of exciting opportunity potentially to tweak some of those amenities. This is a big bicycle corridor. This is a big hiking corridor. How could that picnic area also support those users, whether it's a bike fix-it station or whether it's a bottle filler for not only for Little League, but also for the trail users coming through here? Those are little, fairly inexpensive things that we can add to a project in order to open it up to potential funding sources. It's hard to find a grant, although you did. It's hard to find grants that will support a restroom, but if you're making bike and ped improvements as part of a grant, there's more grants out there for that. Also, if you've got a donor that's a cyclist and you're putting a bike fix-it station or a rest stop on one of their most popular routes, that could open you up to some potential. Next slide. And then getting into concessions. So concessions, we always want to be asking the stakeholders that are going to be using it, what level of food are you going to be serving? And it's level 1 through 3. Level 1, you're literally just opening a package and serving it, or just serving a closed package, right? So there you don't have refrigerators, you don't have more than a concession window and some countertop and some storage. Level 2, which is what we're hearing is more compatible with what the Little League here would be, is when you can get some refrigeration. You can actually have hot dog warmers or pretzel warmers and things like that. It comes with more of a wash sink, and it changes up the finishes within the restroom in order to be a little bit more washable. And then finally is a level 3 that I don't think anybody is talking about just yet, but that's a commercial kitchen. That's a rentable facility for events, but is it appropriate here? Probably not. Next slide. Okay, so this is where we're talking about costs. And we certainly want to, this is certainly where the input of all those priorities that I've been talking to you about and all the input that we need is going to help us later on. Really, the only thing we wanted to do with this was to talk about there's a lot of costs, a lot of different things that are maybe not immediately apparent that go into the cost of building a public improvement. That's all we wanted to do with this slide. I think where we probably went too far was to give you some costs associated with one manufacturer based on a lot of assumptions because we haven't started the design yet. So I'll get to the costs in a second, but I'm hoping that we can table that until we have time to actually go through the design process and give you some alternatives. However, what's going to go into that estimate? You're going to hire a contractor. You're going to have to go through a public bid process. That contractor is going to have to apply for bonds to reassure that they're going to do the construction. They're going to have mobilization costs. They're going to have construction staking. That's all in bonding and mobilization. Demolition, they're going to have to clear the site. They're going to have to, do some of that work. The grading and drainage. Okay, for a restroom, you're going to have to clear a pad. You're going to have to then get it ready for a foundation. If we start to trigger some of the storm drain requirements, so it's over 5,000 square feet of new impervious pavement. If you start to add that, that's why I think that one alternative is maybe infeasible. You're going to trigger all sorts of stormwater treatment requirements that you wouldn't necessarily have to being under that. So that's where grading and drainage would be. Utilities, sanitary sewer, water, electrical. That's all going to have to be brought. 2 of those sites are relatively close together. So there's a marginal increase from being in the setback to the restroom. But one of those is a little bit farther away. So you're going to increase more costs there. Then we get into the site construction. The big number is going to be that restroom concession combo there. That number, when we put it together, we always add a 30% increase on whatever we're given from the actual manufacturer. Why do we do that? Because there's contractor markups and there's all sorts of building pad preparation and utility connections. Based upon our experience of putting these out to bid and working with these manufacturers, that's been a reliable increased number that we've been utilizing successfully. We're going to have to do the accessible parking. We have to do that. Other amenities and signage would all be inside construction. Planting and irrigation. You'll have to tell me, do you want to have any sort of planting there to help screen the building? If so, we're going to need some irrigation. So we have, talking about a modest amount of landscaping. We're not talking about re-landscaping the whole area, but that's one of those areas you'll have to tell me. Right now, because we're so early, we also have contingencies. We have 2 contingencies. One's a design refinement contingency. That reflects the early, since we're so early in this process, there could be things that we haven't discovered yet. Then we always tell our clients to hold a 10% construction contingency for any unforeseen construction. That's in there. Design and soft costs for our design work, topo survey and all that. Those are there. There's also other town costs. Talked about the permitting costs that we're going to have to go through for the annexation. There's costs associated with that. Then there's also staff costs to probably most cities these days are hiring outside construction management firms to manage their projects. That's also within these numbers. And then finally, maintenance. Okay. So again, I want to show you this, but I also want to show you something new that's not on there. So at the bottom left, you can see estimated cost, public restroom company. Okay. That's the one company that I've said that most of our clients, after they've kind of evaluated, end up going to with aesthetic enhancements. And you can see we've provided rough estimates for both restroom and then also restroom concession. Now, I also should have also provided the other end, another manufacturer. Okay, because we're always going to be evaluating manufacturers and working with everybody to figure out who the appropriate one is. So the other one is CXT. And we have used CXT before. Mostly that's been with like state park, trailheads, mid-pen, things like that. And that might be the aesthetic. Absolutely. I'm not saying anything bad about these, but you can see there's significant cost reductions by going with a different manufacturer that we do want to recognize. So I hope we can refocus our attention tonight on all the other elements and leave these to when we bring back alternatives for then you to react to, because you don't know what a CXT building and the options are versus a public restroom. I need to show that to you guys. So with that, I think that's it. Thank you for bearing with me and going through all that and look forward to answering any questions.
Thank you for your presentation. Appreciate it. The way we handle these things, the next thing on our agenda is public comment on this topic, and you may be called upon soon. I didn't catch your name.
Brian Fletcher.
Brian, thank you. Okay. Is any public comment on this agenda item? If you're in the conference room, please step up to the, yes, Karen. No, I'm not. Thank you. The plan, because it's a special meeting and because we have a number of people here, is to have the public comment now on the proposal that's on the table. Then we will go through and let the commissioners ask questions and make comments at the same time, because the distinction between questions and comments is frequently blurred. So that's our plan.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I am, so I wrote this before Brian showed the other cost estimate, but I'm going to read it because we also sent a letter that we thought would be posted publicly, but it wasn't. So I just want to do that, and bear with me here. I'm Karen ASCC. I'm a Parks and Rec Committee member, and I've been involved with this project now for over a year. Before I begin, did anyone else think that that first proposed restroom, the costs, that we were going to get something made out of gold? Okay, that fell flat. Anyway, I would like to share some major concerns I have with the project and the process. First, let's talk costs. Our original budget for the joint restroom concession building, shared when we met with you in the council last fall and with CALA in early May at a site constraints meeting, was approximately $500,000. With our state grant of $180,000, we felt it feasible to raise $300,000 to $400,000 to support this project. I am 99% certain that if these updated budget numbers had been shared with us, we would have recommended against holding this meeting tonight. I am not comfortable supporting $1 million restroom, whether or not our town is in a financial predicament. In the summer of 25, I did receive quotes from CXT Construction for prefab restrooms, including one with a concession area. The footprint shared in your presentation is the exact same one I received. The quote included transportation, engineering, connection to utilities, state fees, and tax, and it was just under $228,000. We figured that another $200,000 to $300,000 could cover the construction of the concrete pad, ADA access from the parking lot, sewer and utilities upgrades. So maybe a total of 500 to 600,000. The proposal we saw was $1 million to 1.3 million, and that's a big disconnect. We respectfully ask for more details on the breakdowns of these costs as we move forward. Second point, site selection. We also expressed to Cala and to Darcy that we wanted the site survey completed prior to this so that you could have complete information about the impact of the actual siting of the new building within or without the setbacks. Third point, parking. Both Parks and Rec and Alpine Little League stress that parking be minimally impacted. Given that both Rosati's and Little League use the lot, there have been challenges, and we see cars along Alpine Road in the no parking zone. This impacts our major evacuation route and may become even more challenging when Stanford housing is built across the street and we create a nicer park setting for our community at Ford Field. Fourth, and finally, fundraising. That was going to come from me and some other people on the Parks and Rec Committee. And at these cost estimates, it would be extremely difficult for this project to be feasible. We have received $190,000 in pledges and know, though, that 80,000 of those pledges are contingent on having concessions. We are also unsure about the other 110. We have to go back to those pledges. So enough said. Thanks for listening and for all you do for our town.
Could you repeat the pledges you have? I just didn't get it in my notes.
Just in talking to certain individuals, we have $190,000 pledged, but we haven't gone out and really talked to everybody. We just wanted to make sure that we were in the ballpark and getting, say, $400,000 or so. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments in the schoolhouse? Thank you. Sarah, are there comments online?
Yes, we have one online. We have Betsy, and I'll allow you to talk. If you can unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you very much. And I appreciate the presentation today. Commissioners, I want to first of all recognize, as was called out by our presenter tonight, the need for clarity. And I have 3 areas in which I'd like to weigh in. One is my sense that the timing is not early, but very tight. We last met 7 months ago. At that time, we had 25 months until the deadline for completed construction. We now have 17 months. I've done a lot of construction before, and that's not a lot of time in my past experience. My second point is about site selection. I had understood that we had previously pretty much let go of site number 1, and we're really looking at site 2 and site 3. The site 2 to me is completely impractical, as well as having some tension with the ingress egress during emergency flows. Building underneath redwoods, the building will either severely damage the root structure of redwoods, or the roots of the redwoods will severely damage the foundation. So we need to keep it outside of that. We're close to the 75-foot setback at that point. It makes to me no sense to violate our own code. So that leaves us with a very fine option of site selection number 3, which I would urge us to narrow down to for the sake of clarity and proceeding with dispatch. Thirdly, I mentioned when we met in November, I mentioned the Portland Loo, and if any of you are interested to Google Portland Loo, that's LOO.com, I find it an excellent alternative, a separate manufacturer that does prefab structures. Their units sit on 6 by 10.5 foot concrete slabs, and all in, it's $200,000 to $300,000 per unit. The cost of the unit itself runs about $185,000. So all in, so long as, let me stipulate, the utilities are brought to the concrete slab site. So at that point, it's all in $200,000 to $300,000, depending upon costs in your area. New York City is currently putting in 6 of them. They're very, very attractive because they are safe, they're durable, they're graffiti proof, and self-cleaning. What more could you want? Thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to further discussion.
I'm Betsy. I'm probably out of order, but I'm the chair. The deadlines that you gave, what are those based on? Are you based on the
January
grant?
1, the January 1, 2020, this is 26, 2028.
But
We have to
what-
have construction completed in order to qualify for the
grant?
grant.
For the grant. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further public comments? On, and Sarah, planning director.
None online.
Okay. Hearing no further comments, I'm a little awkward here, Darcy. You sort of are the proponent, but I'm planning to go to commission comments now.
Yes, please go to commission comments. And again, we're seeking feedback on these alternatives. I don't know if it would be helpful to bring up the slide that shows the 3, because
Sure.
they're numbered, so that might help if you refer to them, site 1, 2, and 3.
Okay, thank you. With your agreement, Chairman Breen, I thought I would do the ASCC first, and I thought I would suggest a 4 to 5 minute per person. You can ask questions, but if you do, that'll cut into your time, or you can make comments. And then when we're finished, because that's going to take god awful amount of time. I can't do the arithmetic. Over half an hour. We'll come back, and if people still feel like they haven't had enough time, we'll do that. I'll be as flexible as I can on calling the time limit, but like to give us something to shoot for. Any obvious
start with
objections?
Lance?
Absolutely, we're going to start with Lance.
You prefer not to be started with?
I'll defer to later in the list.
Gina. Go
Happy to
ahead.
kick us off. I had, I guess I could start with site 2, sort of some questions about that. I know it's difficult because we don't have the scaled site survey, but I think a big question in my mind with this one is just around the building, the proximity to the redwoods, and then the feasibility of screening, beyond the redwood screening. But if there's a desire to screen it more because it would be in the view corridor, what's kind of the feasibility of getting plants that would be kind of voluminous enough to do that? Because, there is a lot of existing tall planting along there.
Yeah. So I forget the caller's name. I don't disagree with anything the caller just said.
Mhm.
Having just constructed glorified shed in my backyard underneath redwoods that are on my neighbor's yard, the extensive roots that the extensive roots you'll have to contend with. On top of that, because of the leaf litter, it creates a very acidic soil that only a certain type of plant will grow. We would be evaluating alternative methods of screening. Maybe that isn't greenery. If you can't get it to grow, why plant it? But there's other methods of screening if that's where you'd like to go.
What do you mean by that? Like with fencing or?
Yeah, you could do any form of, we've done decorative screen panels, for instance. We've done some planters and vines potentially on the face of one side of the building. We would look at alternatives like that. Now, if those are not attractive to the aesthetic of the community, that would be another thing.
And then do you foresee, and this might not really be a question for you specifically, but, for Woodside Fire, they have their 0 to 5 zone where they don't want anything in contact with the building. And I guess that would just be a question in my mind of, is it even possible to locate a building in a place where it's not going to be in violation of that right out the gates? And I know they're increasing their kind of scrutiny of that, but anyway, I would imagine that also potentially increases the difficulty with screening, because probably the best place to screen would be close to the building because it's further from the trees, but then you can't do that. So anyway. My other, my question about site 3 is how does the parking get relocated? So is the parking allowed to be in the view corridor? Is that something we would need to discuss, because that would need sort of special approval?
Well, I'll just say the scope of what we focused on based on council direction does not include any expansion of the parking. So I just put a pin in that, and it's not in the budget. So we'd have to get council clarification on that. But we do allow parking in the view corridor.
Okay.
What is not allowed is a structure.
But as of right now, if there's a building that comes in and fills in a portion of that parking, there's nothing budgeted to actually replace that.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, well, those are my questions. I don't know if someone else wants to. Oh, the other thing I'll just say, sorry, is I think it's fine to take site 1 out of consideration just due to the difficulty with access and also getting, just increased utility costs and work to do that.
Thank
Now I'm
you.
done, sorry.
Thank you.
Now it's your turn, man.
Commissioner Lance, next.
Excellent. I thought site 1 had been removed in our prior meeting. I thought our consensus was we didn't see that as feasible, so I was surprised to still see it. That said, moving on, as far as the site itself, I think we talked about trying to figure out how to maximize best use of the site for multiple functions. How do we preserve the parking? Because that's really becomes the huge thing. When you don't have it, you want it and you need it. And when we need it, we need it. I think we talked about the view corridor. Low green screen to me is better. I love the views, but when you drive up Alpine Road, you just see a wall of green on both sides of you, and you actually can't see any of the hills except for one brief spot just past Brazzotti's field. You can see the mountains. Otherwise, you're in a field of tunnel of green. But that's just me, my preference. I believe the new ADU laws allow for intrusion and setbacks. I think we can go 4 feet off of right of way with an ADU for people that live along and have residential lots. So are we protecting something from ourselves and our own use when we might not be able to protect it from future zoning requests by developers or residents? If we incur, let's place it thoughtfully so that we can move over and protect the parking. We could also protect all of the foot traffic that goes on so that we don't have people, especially young people that are worried about snow cones or whatever, not paying attention to cars that are trying to turn around in a lot. Would be my comment. The costs. It's by the foot. So as soon as we start moving away from our electrical drop and our connection point with the sewer, we're going to increase our costs. Trying to figure out how we get as close to that as possible to minimize seems to me an area we can choose to impact costs and minimize our costs. We may not on overhead and some of that, but we might with conversation. We don't have a site survey or topo map, as you want to call it. And right now, I really don't think anybody here can visualize where the setback is. It's a fuzzy line, just like we've seen on these other
Yeah.
drawings. And until people, I think, have defined points or clarity, we need to have clarity to understand what we're aiming at. And so I think that's underprepared. And I'm disappointed we still haven't even got anything from we requested it in November. I think we requested some sort of clarity on that. I think the construction, yes, it's always more than we think. But it's a prefab. Maybe we could do a wood infill even less. And I know we don't have a lot of time, but you run all your utilities to the core, your chase, and then you make all your connections through the walls, and it goes fairly fast. It's my comment there too, as I just think the presentation made it more dramatic than I think it needs to be. I'd like us to move over towards where the existing shack is, and maybe we split the baby, so to speak, on the building, and some of it's in the setback and some of it is not. But the dining part where the kids are going to be in the setback space for safety, put the doors to the bathrooms facing the parking lot for safety and access. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Commissioner Chair Breen.
You want to go?
You go ahead.
All right.
Keep all you guys in the same boat here.
Site number 1 out. And there are a lot of reasons for that. One are the incredible oak trees there. I mean, you just don't want any disturbance to that experience. I really like the snack shack where it is. And I like the feeling of it. And I understand that they're rats, but I think they're rats at Roberts and Bianchini's as well. So I think that just goes with the territory. And I think it's adorable there. If redwoods are really going to be an issue, maybe we should cut the redwoods down and take their roots out and do something, find a tree that we feel works there. The only reason why I'm actually even supporting this thing, I think that they need to have bathrooms for the kids who play there. But the whole reason why I'm involved was I wanted this to be a legitimate project so that there would never be any development in the field. So, I mean, I think that this legitimizes our baseball field, and it legitimizes Park and Rec for kids and for everybody in town. And I think it's a really good thing. So other than that, I looked at your prices. I mean, the prices, and I know that you don't want to settle on these things now, but how could, grading and drainage, all of that be $10,000? It's flat. There's no demolition. I mean, what does it take to knock anything down there? Nothing, so I think that the numbers are kind of way off, and, but we'll come back to that later on.
Yeah. And go ahead.
I actually like when Betsy called, what is the loos? I thought those were great looking. Maybe we could even get 3 loos, so, I thought that was ongoing. I don't think that this should be a big, expensive project. I think we should just squeeze it in as we can. And as our town is different, we don't need big fancy stuff. I would tell them to go pee behind the tree. So, I'm happy with the shack the way it is, and with adding a couple of bathrooms. And so I hope that that's what happens. I also don't think we need a topographic study. I think we know where the edge of the creek is. You just measure in from there, and it's not going to be anywhere near the creek. So why is that important? Anyway, I just, if we're broke, let's try to be prudent, here with this project. And in terms of fundraising, Park and Rec girls, have you dealt with Susan Ford yet? Have you talked to her? Okay. Well, because I talked to her quite a bit and it needs to work. All right, thank you. Those are my comments.
Thank you, commissioners. Let's now turn to comments/questions from the planning commission. Last time we did something, I went alphabetically. This time I'll go alphabetically backwards. Karen, would you like to go first? Followed by Nicholas, followed by Doug, followed by me.
Okay. I'm still in favor of 3 because I'm not very comfortable of it.
Please make sure you speak up and speak into your microphone.
I'm still in favor of 3. I'm not comfortable of violating our own town standards. And with the redwoods and everything, to me, it makes more sense. That parking lot is not used continuously every day. So a little bit overflow to me, I'm kind of comfortable with, and it's not even in our scope. I'm not, do I have any other questions? I had a weird question. Do people still use water fountains today at all? Do we even need them?
Mostly jug fillers.
Yeah, right,
Water fountain that we put these days is a jug filler.
right.
Sometimes it has
Okay,
a bowl. It's multi-purpose. Yeah.
okay, thank you. And, having been to a million different parks and stuff, the mid-pen bathrooms, as long as they're not ball toilets, none of these aesthetics to me are particularly appealing. So whether it's one or the other, maybe that Lou one online is a little more modern, but I don't know. If we can save half the money and get something else that works, that's fine with me. That's all my comment.
Thank you. Nicholas,
Thank you.
thank you. Go for it.
So it's a 400 square foot space at a cost of about 1.3 to more. And I look at that and say, geez, $3,000 a square foot when the town is in its fiscal situation that we're in. We're not thinking about it, but we are. And I look at that and I say, what am I doing here? I can't imagine us moving forward unless there was a very, very significant donation that made it happen. And if we're looking at $3,000 a square foot, there's a lot of stuff that we could do. We could pay for our sheriff for a couple of years.
Yeah.
But just saying.
Forced parking.
Going to location, honestly, peeing behind a tree seems like the highest and best use right now of the locations. And it's also the most cost effective. And frankly, it's the most consistent with historically the town of Portola Valley and its ethic. So,
For the soil.
that I am unaware, but I can't imagine putting a bathroom anywhere approximate to the oak trees that we have there. I would be surprised if redwood trees are really appropriate in that location. It seems like somebody probably planted them once upon a time, thinking that it was a good idea because she doesn't like a redwood tree, except if you then have one. So I would have zero problem putting it in that location, but certainly we wouldn't put it next to the oak tree. And again, unless we can figure out the economics of the situation, I think that this is a good and important issue. It is a good and important issue, but either we've got to be a whole lot more creative about a solution, or we kind of need to pause it until we can find a source of funding.
I think Tom Ford planted those redwoods.
I was wondering if it was Wheelan when he screwed up my yard. Somebody had a big sale. Nicholas, are you finished? Thank you.
Yes.
Doug, Commissioner Morris, please.
My comments are, I agree, take out one for cost and the oak trees. I had a question about the level of the current concession stand. You laid out 3 levels of concession. What is the current level? Is it level 2 or is it level 1?
So the history on that, I mean, maybe you can, it's basically not permitted, right? It was kind of grandfathered in, right? So they're doing a few different things from like cooking outside that probably wouldn't be allowed with a new structure. So not sure if that answers your question, but in talking with them and trying to understand what they're doing out there, level 2 seems to be as close as we can
Okay.
get.
That was my question. Okay. And then the issue with site 3, which I'm not sure why, I don't know Ford Field that well, but it looks like the distance for site 3 and site 2 is about the same distance of a home run ball. So is that the case? And how do you mitigate against home run balls? And is that cost effective way to do that?
Yeah, I think that's when we provide you alternatives, right? And to show you how we're going to mitigate that. It may not be right up against the fence. Maybe it's pulled back from it. Maybe it's the way we site where people are going to be waiting in line so that there is some sort of protection with the roof, or maybe there's netting. But they are, like you said, relatively close as far as location wise. But I do think there's some variables within each that we can adjust to mitigate those concerns.
And I guess in general, if the redwoods weren't an issue, or if there's a way to easily mitigate them, it seems to me, I like where it is today, and it seems like it eliminates the parking issue. I'm not as concerned about the 75-foot setback, and so I guess kind of with Lance of split, what's the most reasonable place between 2 and 3 that would make sense is kind of where I come out on the different sites. It seems like there should be an optimal area, like taking home run balls and routes into account, figure out where that is, and that's where it should go.
Thank you. Let's see. My comments, I'll try not to be duplicative, but I look at things from a big picture point of view. And I used to live in San Mateo, and one of my best friends had to redo a bunch of buildings because it was the main entrance to the town. So I think, first of all, is this something that we really want to gussy up and make it look really pretty like a main entrance to the town? And I think the answer for me is really no. I would really like to make this sort of meet the sort of minimum practical consideration. And of course, cost is a major factor here. I agree to remove site 1. I thought we'd already agreed to that. And my reasoning is because of sewer and electrical. I think it's a joke about the home run ball. I just assume never hear that again. You can always just put a little 3-foot, nobody's going to hit a home run ball so far over the fence that it's going to go much higher than a building. So just, let me build it if you want. Just put up some 2x4s and put up a fence there. Having said that, I will only agree to a building at site 2 in the setback if it is a remodel of the current building, and that would actually be my far and away preference for the whole thing. I would find a way to remodel that to meet the needs. If it's unpermitted, then permit it. I would bring in some version of a toilet. I'm not sure I like your version here where it's connected. I really like Betsy's Portland Loo or something very simple. Of course, the opening has to be towards the parking lot just so people aren't out there in the setback any more than they already would be. I live at the ranch where they also planted a whole bunch of redwoods, and they're not native in this area, so I don't see love for those redwoods. I, however, agree. I think I heard people say, I don't want fencing. I would like visual fencing with plants. And there are a bunch of, actually, since your picture's been taken, there's probably about 20 feet of 10-foot redwoods that have just grown in. Removing the redwoods, by the way, only solves half your problem, because removing the roots are a god awful nightmare. I want data on the parking. I hear this parking issue thrown around all the time, and how now the private Rosati's is using parking there. I hope we're getting money for that. I would like to know the status of how many spots are there, how many we would quote give up or not give up. There's no lines there. It's dirt parking lot. I think you could probably get 10 more cars in there on some days than you could on other. So I want data on that before somebody tells me we can't lose parking spaces. I want to know what they are. And quite frankly, I want to know what money we're getting for that, because I assume we're getting paid to allow our public property to be used for a private purpose. So that's important to me. I also noticed, notwithstanding my comment about home run balls, none of your things here, none of your illustrations have solar units on top. I would think that a simple solar unit might be usable on some things, especially if we can do some tree trimming, such as the shed or even the toilet itself. One thing I hate about most of those mid-pin and other toilets is when you have to go in there in the dark, and I don't like to use my cell phone to be able to see my way to the pit toilet. So even a solar unit on top of a toilet would be very handy. I'm sorry, it's a personal comment, but too much information. I would like to see the baseball field get to this level 2, the hell with level 3 on the concessions. But I do think nothing like getting your pretzels and nachos when you go to a ball game or whatever else. I have had some offline conversations. I'm concerned about the ongoing maintenance, but I guess that's a small price to pay if and when we get through all of this. I guess my final major comment, looking at my notes here and the time, I'm really, really, really disturbed, flashing red lights, about your cost differences compared to the work that our committee has done. I understand that even if I took, I don't know the name of your committee, Karen, but the committee's, Karen ASCC's comments, even if I added, say, 25% for the fact that the government's doing it or something like that, and I don't know if that's a fair number. I used to use 50% when I practiced law. It's still, your numbers are still way high compared to her numbers. So I think even something like that with your numbers would get up only to a million, not 1,000,001 or 1,000,003. So I'm very bothered by the numbers. I think, excuse me, I was trying to keep track of everybody else's comments.
If I could just make one point on that one.
My final comment. And the floor is yours. I'm happy to have you respond. It's Darcy's agenda item, so I'm also happy to have her respond. And if we've done this in a relatively efficient manner, I'm happy to have as much discussion as anyone wants.
Yeah. Just
She'll
on.
have to go to the bathroom. Go ahead.
Just on the estimate, please take a look at the new one that was presented tonight. It's much more apples to apples with the manufacturer that the Park and Rec Committee was looking at. It is more, but it is probably more in line with what you were just talking about. As far as
you're saying you gave us new numbers that
I
are
presented,
not in this.
yeah.
In your presentation, they're not what we got.
No.
We can bring up the slide
That
deck.
looks the same as
Or
what
the
I
next
got.
one. So,
There it is.
yeah.
Oh,
So the new one for the restroom only
gotcha.
is
Yeah.
around 500K.
I think you were looking 500 to 600 with the restroom concession. And this is at 707.
Yeah.
Okay. And there are contingencies and things like that involved in
Got
it
it.
too.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I see
appreciate
that.
Allowing me to clarify that.
I don't know if there's anybody left online, but that's not in the packet that was distributed. Where would somebody in the public find that chart, Sarah?
So this was presented today in the meeting, but we can post it publicly after the meeting. So
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Let me see here. Are there any other comments the commissioners would like to make? We have gone through this efficiently. I just want to make sure everybody's comfortable before we close it out.
I want to just recognize Darcy for putting together this this committee, and this is in addition to everything else that you're doing. So I want to say thank you, and also to the subcommittee as well, who's been bird dogging this for what, a year, 2 years. So
Yeah, thank you. Point well taken.
Can I add one thing too? Because I went first and I didn't know. I was supposed to
Yes,
get
absolutely.
my
That's
preferred.
to give you another
Sorry.
chance.
Yeah, I think in general, the redwoods notwithstanding, that I think site 2 seems like the best place, especially as we're, discussing cost, that's going to help us to keep the cost from getting out of control. That is all.
Sorry, are you a subcommittee? It's just Parks and Rec. Okay.
So she'd kind of be out of order, but on the other hand, she has information she wants to, I'm gonna call on her. Go ahead and approach the mic. I want to get all the information on the record that we possibly can. So fire me if I'm out of order.
Yeah, thank you for letting me talk. I love the comments. Thank you very much. And I just, there have been a lot of meetings and a lot of discussions. And so what you heard tonight maybe doesn't encompass everything, but you did touch on was the redwoods. And that triggered something in my mind, which is we have been in touch with conservation, a member on conservation, who said those redwoods are not in very good shape. And there are, I actually talked to her about screenings that would be more appropriate along there. So I wanted to allay any fears about that. And one thought we had is if we can get this building as close to the setback as possible, meaning it might move a little bit from the snack shack and we can create a beautiful, really park-like setting with the screening, it could be a really beautiful place and used more by the community. So I just wanted to share that and that we have looked at the redwood situation. Thank you.
I had one more comment that I forgot to ask, so I'll call on myself. And that is there a way, and I guess Darcy, this goes to you or to your consultant, is there a way to do this in a phased manner? I'm thinking partly of the grant that the Parks and Rec Committee wants to get. I also understand that grant could be used for other items, so I'm not sure how much that should be considered in driving our schedule. But anytime you do a big project, there's usually a way to phase it. So I don't know if you've thought about that at all, or if that makes any.
Well, yes. And so I'll just mention briefly what Karen alluded to. When we started talking to Brian and started contemplating an expanded scope, because sometimes you honestly have to start bigger and scale back. There was a vision discussed amongst us about having more of I don't want to say a destination picnic ground here, because it's not really set up for that, but a really nice place for the little leagues to have very nice picnics. I think at one of the meetings, Karen's explained that they actually have a team dinner after the games. And I think it's both teams. So there's quite a bit of kids. And right now the tables, look out over the field, but perhaps they could be raised up a little bit and you could have this nice vista and you could actually create a place, like a meaningful place, a nice gathering spot that could also be used by trail riders. And with that comes some amenities, maybe the water bottle filler, maybe some nicer plants, maybe a sign, maybe a bike rack. I mean, yeah, then it got to be more. But the bottom line is we want it to serve the users now. And I think there are amenities that are missing there just to serve them. Phasing it might be reasonable, not for the building construction, because that you have just a lot of efficiency mobilizing a construction crew, but with some of the other things, like scouts could originally worked on the picnic tables and maybe they could do that as a project. Maybe scouts or our wonderful conservation committee could do the landscaping work. So I think, if this proceeds, we probably will try to look at things we could easily spin off and have as community projects.
Can I ask one more direct question? You don't have to answer, but is it worth considering restroom only or remodeling the concession only, or you really, really want both?
Well, I think that it's because of it really did surprise me that greater cost to add in the concessions. I don't know if you want to bring that up really fast, but my initial thought was to present the option to the council of just doing a bathroom and then renovating the concession stand. Now, this isn't that much more here for the lower cost option, so maybe that's reasonable, but I think it should just be an option presented to the council. And another thing that I just want to mention is that building, the concession building, is used primarily for private use. So the town it's not a publicly used building at this point and probably won't be. So that's just a consideration for the costs.
And I want the Portola Valley Garden Club to do the landscaping. And also it's in the scenic corridor, so everything needs to be native, California native. And so really we don't even need to irrigate, if we plant at the right time and get it done. So it would be, we can do that.
Yeah,
Check
thank you.
30 grand off.
Thank you.
On the record. Any other, I want to close this item and move on to our agenda, but knowing how important this is to the town manager, I want to make sure we get everything out here that she feels like she needs. You need anything more from us?
No, but based on what I heard, I think before we go to council, we'll discuss this, but I think we need the survey just to know where that line is. And, could the town staff, I want you to hear this loud and clear, upholds, honors, respects the general plan immensely. So I think in order to bring a comprehensive information package to the council, we need that survey. We need to be able to tell them that, as well as what the impact on parking would be. So we may need a little more time to do that, but I think we'll bring that to them and defer to them, because to me, that's the pivotal question. I think after hearing that you are, with one or two exceptions, comfortable with that, I think to me, that's, I don't want to say surprise, but I just want to take a closer look at that and be able to present that information to the council.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Usually we comment on proposals, usually don't really sort of get to help make them. So thank you all. I'll close the agenda item on that. Thank you. And next agenda item is information, is commissioner, staff, and committee reports. And I think the planning director has herself down on the agenda. Do you have a further report, Sarah?
I think I'd like to give the safety element update again, now that we also have planning commission and ASCC. So the plan was to do it at both meetings.
Great.
Oops. Okay, so apologies for planning commission,
Thank you,
because you
Brian.
already heard this a little bit, but wanted to give this update again because we have the draft safety element that is out for public review right now. And there was a joint town council and planning commission study session that happened last week on June 10th. There was great discussion on that. And right now there's the public review period that's going on, which started May 29th and will go to the end of June. So during this public review period, we really want to get comments from everyone and hopefully get comments by the end of the month. So want to just talk a little bit about a reminder of how to submit comments. So the safety element has a website, and on the website, there is a form to submit your comments. And so I have the website here, can also share this out. Within the form, there's also an area to upload a PDF too. So I've gotten requests of, can we upload, how do we provide comments? Do I provide comments in PDF or whatnot? So you should be able to submit a variety of comments through that form online just to be able to track everything. If that doesn't work, you can walk into town hall and hand something off, or you're also welcome to email me. But this form online is the best way to submit comments around the draft safety element. Another thing is there was some discussion at this joint study session about the next steps. And so next steps were provided at that meeting, but there is an update, not necessarily an updated timeframe just yet, but an update on kind of the sequencing of things that will happen before formal review and adoption. So the next step, during this public review period, we'll get comments. Once that closes, it's to evaluate comments. And then there's an opportunity, if needed, to meet with applicable town committees or make sure, we have the comments consolidated from, the important stakeholders and community members. Then we would update the draft and then come back to Planning Commission for a study session and then Town Council for a study session, and then circulate this draft document for external agency review. So again, that during this whole process, it would still be a draft document. Then we would come back to Planning Commission and Town Council for a formal review and adoption. So wanted to give that update again.
Thank you. And
Can I please reiterate what we said earlier?
Yes.
Though, that the comments from the public that are going to be received in a written way everyone else in town needs to hear what they said. We need to all understand what the comments coming in are, so
Yes.
that the public is informed.
Yeah, and so I think the plan is once the public review period closes, we can post the comments publicly
Yes,
and
please.
have just kind of
Right
the raw
away.
data.
Yep.
So,
It would help if they actually, as they came in, we heard them, so that would help promote other people writing in and just sharing their ideas. So I think it would be great if we could get them as they come in.
okay, I
Thank
can
you.
check if it's maybe a weekly thing. I can consider that as well. The other update, just because I know there was a comment that said the public comments were not posted. If this is the right comment that was being referred to, I did receive a letter from Patty Dews, Karen Askey, and John Myers at around 10:30 today. And that was posted online to the Planning Commission website, and an email was sent to Planning Commission and ASCC with reference to that public comment letter. So hopefully that was the one. Otherwise, I didn't receive letters to post. So I just want to clarify that the commissioners were sent a letter kind of discussing with feedback around the Ford Field discussion.
this is the letter that we didn't see. Well, we're like ready to adjourn on the town website. Okay, I didn't see that. Somebody walked in. Do you know who she is? I don't even know.
Yes, but let you take it.
I'm inclined to not allow you to comment. You're an hour and a half after our start date. I don't know who you are and what you comment on. So that makes me quite a difficult situation. I don't know if you're the last speaker. You want to comment on Sarah's comment about the safety element? Okay. All right. Will you get up, please? Go to the microphone, turn it on, identify yourself. And this is an exception that I don't think I ever plan to give again.
Thank you. My name's Christy, and I just wanted to say that when letters come in to the joint session, and then they're mentioned in the meeting, but the public never saw them, such as the Ronnie's letter and the other letter that was mentioned. Karen Vatra's letter.
Pass that down.
So we never saw those letters and yet
Okay,
they were,
I understand your point. You're talking about comments made by commissioners in the last meeting. Those are comments on the safety element, and those comments are available from anybody until June 30th. And there's no requirement for us to independently post those comments now.
oh, okay. We just
Meeting
really
records
respect
are
what
not-
you all have to say and we think you're more educated than the public.
Yeah.
So we do want to read them. Thank you.
And I appreciate that. And I know you had that concern. I'm sorry, I didn't recognize you, Christy. Okay. Any other comments? Any other reports? That's where we are on the agenda. Adjournment. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
So moved. Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.